Have you ever heard someone say, kids learn languages so easily, or I'm too old to learn a language? It's one of the most common myths about language learning. But the truth is much more interesting. Yes, our brains do change as we age, but those changes don't mean that language learning becomes impossible. In fact, at different stages of our lives, we actually have different advantages when it comes to language learning. So, today, let's take a look at how language learning works across childhood, adulthood, and older adulthood, and how you can use your brain's strengths at any age. Let's start with childhood. Children are incredible language learners, especially when it comes to sounds and pronunciation. Young brains are extremely flexible. They're high in neuroplasticity, meaning kids' brains are very good at adapting to new situations and forming different connections. Because of this, children can often hear and produce sounds that even adults might struggle with. That's why a child who grows up learning multiple languages can often switch between them with near perfect accents. For example, a child learning Spanish might easily be able to roll their R's, or a child learning French might naturally pick up nasal sounds like on compared with on in English. Adults can absolutely learn these sounds too, but it might take more time, practice, and repetition. But here's the important thing. Pronunciation is only one part of language learning. An area where kids struggle more is categorizing words correctly. We have to remember that kids are learning how the world works at the same time that they're learning how to speak properly. When kids are learning new concepts, sometimes it can take time to put things into correct categories in order to communicate what they want to say. For example, you might see a child using the word dog for any four-legged furry animal, but that can become a problem when the animal is actually a bear, for example. For things like this, it's adults that help frame the learning. By the time you reach adulthood, the brain has changed in some ways. The ability we once had to pick up new accents or different sounds has slightly decreased. Learning new letters, tones, or pronunciations will likely take more time than it would when we were 6 years old. But adults gain something incredibly valuable in exchange: learning strategies. Adults already understand and know how learning works. You know how to study, you know how to practice, and you know how to connect new information to things you already understand. For example, adults can use creative techniques like imagining silly or unusual scenarios to help them remember vocabulary. If you're learning the French word poubelle for trash can, you might imagine someone yelling poubelle every time they throw something away. It may sound ridiculous, but the brain really remembers weird or vivid ideas and scenarios. Those connections help anchor the word into memory. So, even though adults may take longer with pronunciation, they often learn vocabulary faster and more efficiently because they understand how to learn. As we move into older adulthood, another interesting change happens in the brain. There's an increase in something called crystallized intelligence. This type of intelligence comes from life experience. Over the years, you've built up a huge network of knowledge from all the things that you've learned, repeated, and stored in long-term memory. Because of this, older adults often have strong understanding, reasoning, and vocabulary skills in their native language. The challenge that older adults face is their brain is already storing a lot of long-term information, which means there's more competition for adding new information. But that doesn't mean learning stops. It just means that the approach matters more. For older adults, language learning works best when you build on what you already know. For example, if you're learning the word dog in your target language, write it down, say it out loud, read it in a sentence, and imagine it connected to the dog you picture in your mind. The more ways you interact with the word, the easier it becomes to place it inside your existing knowledge network. And this is where review becomes incredibly important. When you regularly revisit vocabulary, your brain is reminded that the word is valuable. What's great about languages is you can stack it on the linguistic knowledge you're already holding in your long-term memory. For older adults, the spaced repetition system is going to be a game changer. This system brings previously learned vocabulary back for review before you forget them, and can be modified so that you can review it more frequently to help you remember it longer. So, every stage of life comes with its strengths and weaknesses. Children are amazing at picking up sounds and accents. Adults are great at learning efficiently and using memorization strategies. Older adults hold decades of knowledge and experience that helps them connect ideas together. Language learning doesn't disappear as you age. It just changes. And every age is able to learn languages easily with the right techniques. So, if you ever thought, I'm too old to learn a language, science says otherwise. Your brain is still capable of building new connections throughout your entire life. It may take a different approach, a little more patience, or a little more review, but learning is still possible. The most important factor to learning isn't your age, it's consistency. A few minutes of practice every day can slowly build thousands of connections in your brain, regardless of how old you are. And before you know it, you're thinking, speaking, and understanding a language you once thought was impossible to learn. So, no matter where you are in your life, the best time to start learning a language is today. If you want to see how common language learning myths might be misleading you, check out the next video where Abby debunks this myth and 9 others. Happy learning!